All right, so finding percents. You're going to have basic problems that give you exactly the numbers that you need, or you're going to have word problems. So usually, if you find the word is, that is the part. And if you see the word of in a sentence, that usually pertains to the word or the number that goes and means the whole amount. Then they'll give you a percent. And remember, percents are always out of, which means divided by 100. So one way to do problems with percents is to use the proportion method. The other one is to use it as far as words and math. So usually they will give you a number and it will say whatever something is something percent of a number. So 5 is 50% of 10. So 10 would be the whole. So where you see the word of, usually the whole piece is there. Where you see is, the part is there. This kind of helps with your word problems. The only issue with this method is you have to remember when you plug in to the equation to be sure to put in a decimal, because we do not put percents into an equation. If you use this method, you do not have to do the conversion, so there's less error. So if you look in words and math, where you see the word is would be equals, and where you see the word of would be multiplication. So those are the two ways to finding percents. Now, what do I mean by part or whole? So in word problems, the parts are usually pertaining to your tip, your tax, your discounts. If you took a test, what was your score? Maybe the interest you earned on an account, or an interest you have to pay on something. Or like a down payment. That means you're not paying for the full amount of the car, you're just paying a piece of it. Okay. And then your wholes are, what is your initial bill cost, your car cost, things like that. It's pretty much thought of as your starting amount, your principal. And if it was a test, it'd be how many questions were on the test, or what was the test out of. That would tell you your whole. And then if you got questions that are multi-step, where they wanted you to play, okay, what is the total after you're given the discount, you have to remember to subtract that part once you figure it out. If you're given a question where it wants you to pay a full bill, how much will you leave on the table? How much will you pay after tax? Then you have to remember to add that small part to the whole to get the final total. So let's look at a few examples. All right, so here's one here. What percent of 84 is 21? For these problems, you're wanting the answer of a percent. It is critical that you put the percent sign, because 50% is not the same as 50. It means 0 point. And if you just put 50 down, that technically means like 5,000%. So you want to make sure you put the percent sign, or yes, it is completely wrong. Okay, so they give you two numbers. Just by them giving you two numbers, you know with all these equations there's going to be a part, a whole, and a percent. So the percent is missing here, let alone it says it right here. So we know our answer that we're looking for is a percent. Of 84 is 21. Okay, well, if we look up at our diagram up here, when we're setting this up, is the part. Okay, I spot that right here. So 21 should go right there. Of 84. 84 is your whole. That should go on the bottom. Percent is what we're looking for. So I'm going to put the variable x. And percent is always out of 100. So now I know I have my problem here. And going back to the previous sections we've learned, you're doing cross products. All right, so 21 times 100 is 21, and then add the zeros. And then this would be 84x. Then once you get to this step, you would divide by 84, divide by 84. And then when you do 2100, divide by 84, you get 25. So x is 25. What does that mean? It is not just 25. It means it's 25. Please don't forget, and maybe you want to put it here, it's 25%. If you do not add the percent sign, it is wrong. It needs to have the percent sign because a whole number is different than a percent. All right, because a whole number is technically a decimal, which means you would have to times it by 100. So if you left 25 there, then 25 times 100 is 2,500%. So it's important. Put the percent sign so that it's correct. If you don't like that method and you want to use this method here, all right, well, let's look at what we have. It says what percent. So we know percent is the piece that's missing. All right, 21 is, so 21 equals something percent of 84. So we know that that's where the variable goes. So then you have 84x equals 21. Now divide by 84, divide by 84. You will get x equals 0.25. Then you must times 100 because that is a decimal, and then that will get you 25%. So you just have to pick what method do you like. You can use this method or you can use the proportion method of 75. So for setting it up with the proportion, the top piece is your part. So is, 90 is, all right, so 90 goes here. Is what percent? We know the percent is then missing. Don't forget, you want the percent sign. Percent is always out of 100 of 75. Of 75. All right, well, right away, I notice this is top heavy. That means this should be over 100%. Now you do your cross product. So then you get 75x is equal to 90, and then add the zeros. So 9,000. Then divide by 75, divide by 75. X then, when you divide it, should get 120, and then don't forget, you want your percent sign. If you don't like that method, you can look at words in math, and it's 90 is equals what percent x of 75. All right, so 75x equals 90, divide by 75, divide by 75, x equals 1.2. But then you have to remember that is a decimal, so we must times by 100 to convert it to percent, and that gets you 120%. So yes, you can have over 100%. It just means that you maybe got extra credit on a test, maybe you did some extra problems, maybe you earned some extra money on top of what your initial payment was, so like if you're buying stocks, things like that. All right, what percent of 102 is 17? Okay, so now let's pull it in. Percent of is, percent we're missing, percents out of 100. All right, do your cross multiplication. So 102x equals 17 times 100, add your zeros. Then you need to get x by itself, so divide by 102, divide by 102. When you divide these, what you will notice is that you will end up getting 16.6666 repeating. All right, well, that means that you can have an answer of 16 2/3%, 16.6 repeating percent, or some publishers will put 16.67 and they will put the about sign because they know that you rounded because it was a continuous decimal. If you did this problem using the words in math, then again, you're going to have what percent. So what percent of 102 means equals 17. At this point, you see you need to divide by 102, divide by 102. Then you have x equals, when you divide and you do the 17 divided by 102, you'll get 0.1666, and it will just keep going and going and going. At that point, you need to remember times 100 to convert a decimal to a percent. And then that gets you about gets you 16.6, and you're back to square one, repeating percent. So again, two methods to solving these problems. You can do the proportion method or words and math. For this example, the is, or what we know as the part, will be missing. And how can I tell that? Because it says what is, it gives you the percent, and then it gives you of the whole. Okay, so if we use the same thing, the proportion method, we know that the part is missing. So we're going to put the X here up the top because the part is missing. The whole is 11,400 equals, the percent they give you is 3.5. So you can write it as 3.5, or you can put it as 3.5. It does not matter. And then percent is always out of 100. At this point, you are doing cross multiplication, cross product. So 100x equals 3.5 times 11,400. Okay, so then 11,400 times 3.5, you end up getting 39900. So you get 39,900. And now you need to get x by itself. So you must divide by 100, divide by 100. Whenever you're dividing by tens, hundreds, you just count the amount of zeros, and that's how many decimal places you move it. So since it's divide by 100, 1, 2, your final answer, x equals 399. That means that 399 is 3.5% of 11,400. That makes sense. That's really small. Okay, it's nowhere near close to what that number is. So that would be your part. That's your answer. Again, if you like the other method with the equations, you would just have your part equals 3.5% of, here. The only problem is you cannot put 3.5%. You must convert that to a decimal. So to convert this to a decimal, if you have 3.5%, you must divide by 100. So 1, 2. That means when you plug it in, you actually need to write it like that. So 0.035 times 11,400 equals your part, which is your x. Then you go ahead and you multiply this. So x equals, you punch in 0.035 times your 11,400, and then you get 399. So whether or not which way you like, again, this one here, you don't have to worry about the percent. This one you have to remember to convert it to a decimal. All right, word problem. Mrs. Vivek bought a used car for $9,200. She made a down payment of $1,840. Find the percent of the purchase price that is the down payment. So we want to know what the down payment is. Well, if I'm paying a down payment, making sense of it, even without knowing the mathematical formula, a down payment, I'm only paying a piece of my car. I'm not paying my whole thing. So I know right now that I've paid a piece of it. And what piece did I pay? I paid right here. This was my down payment. Okay, let alone it says find the thing price that is the down payment. All right. Then I need to think, what is the whole? Well, the whole is the cost of the purchase. And that whole cost was $9,200. And it asked me to find the percent. Okay, so now that I know what I need, I would write my given out. So I'm trying to figure out the 1840 is what percent of 9,200. That's the actual question I'm looking for. So that would be your given. Those are the important words you need. So then I can set it up as my proportional amount if I'd like. All right, part goes on top, part over whole equals the percent, don't forget, out of 100. Now I do cross multiplication, your cross products. So 9200x equals, add the two zeros to this, so 184000. All right, once I get to this point, I need to isolate x, so then I take 184,000 divided by 9,200. When I do that, I get x equals 20. Now, am I done? No, I need to recall it's the percent, so this is 20%. If you don't like this method, you want to do the equation. Again, is equals the percent times 9,200. Then you would divide by 9,200, divide by 9,200. When you get this, if you do this method, you should get 0.20. Then at this point, you have your decimal. Okay, well, I need to then do times 100 to convert it to a percent. So again, decimal, we want a percent answer. That means that 1, 2, you end up getting 20%. So that down payment is 20% of your final cost. All right. So the plane traveled 2,410 miles, which is 230% of the distance from Boston to St. Louis. Find the distance from Boston to St. Louis to the nearest mile. So what you have to do is pull out from your statement the given. So I see 2,410 miles is 230% of the distance from Boston to St. Louis. And then it tells you to find Boston to St. Louis. There's your X, there's your variable. So you just have to pull out what is given to you and find the words is and of. Think of the situation that's going on. And if you notice, it said 230%. That means it's going to be top heavy. So the part is larger than Boston to St. Louis. So go ahead and stack it. So your part is 2,410. Your whole, your Boston to St. Louis, that's what we're missing. We don't know what that is equal to 230% over, always percent is out of 100. Now do your cross products. So 24100, add the zeros, is equal to 230x. Now you need to isolate the x, so you do the 241,000 divided by the 230. And what you should notice is x equals 1,047.826. Okay, well, it says to the nearest mile. So if I were to look at this, I take the nearest mile, that's the ones place, and I look next to it. That means that they traveled from Boston to St. Louis is about 1,048 miles. If you do it with the equation method, that would be 2,410 is equals You need to convert that to a decimal, so 1, 2, so that would be 2.3x. Then divide by 2.3, divide by 2.3. Your x gets you should get the same number. And you round that to about, miles. So it doesn't matter which one you pick, they both work. The key is finding out what is the part, what is the whole. Again, if you're given the percent, that will help you. If it's over 100%, you know it's going to be top heavy. If it's less than 100%, then you know that it is going to be bottom heavy and that the whole is going to be larger. The first math test had 16 questions on it. The second test had 220% as many questions as the first test. Find the number of questions on the second test. So the second test is what? So second test is what? Is 220% of the first. So let's plug in what we have. The second test, that's what we want. So x is, your part, is 220% of, what was the first test? 16. So you want to know what that is. All right, well, let's set it up with the proportion method. Is missing, so we put our x up at the top. How many were on the first one? 16. What's the percent they gave you? 220% over 100. Do your cross multiplication. Okay, so then you have 16 times 220. That is 3520. Now you have to figure out, okay, well, if that's 3520, then how many questions are you going to have when you divide that by 100? So 3520 divided by 100. X equals 35.2. Well, you can't have partial questions, so you need to make sense of it. So you round, you will have about 36 questions. If you were to do the other method, x equals, you have to convert that to a decimal, so that would be 2.2 times your 16. So then 2.2 times your 16. Again, you'll get the same answer. You can't have the partial questions, so that means you'll have about 36 questions.